Hope you're doing well today. Welcome back to today's episode of The Weapons of War, and I'm your host, Eden Chonde. Today we are going to tackle another subject, which is about carbon markets or carbon credits. We are going to look at this mainly because on Wednesday, June 17th, this year, 2026, I found this post on the NTV X page, and it read, carbon markets are creating new opportunities for individuals and businesses to earn income by reducing or offsetting carbon emissions. That was the headline. I've tackled this very topic in the past, about a year ago, but whenever these news items resurface or news pieces resurface, I am often inclined to readdress them. And today this is what I'm going to do, readdressing the matter of the carbon markets, especially what they are not showing us. So I'll pause here so that you watch this clip that I found on the NTV social pages, and then we shall return and discuss it.
Overall concept, like I've said, is that if you are avoiding the pollution of carbon dioxide into the air or the buildup of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, or if you're taking away from the atmosphere carbon dioxide that has already been polluted, then you can measure how much you have removed, how much you have avoided.
I like the fact that there's another side of avoiding carbon dioxide.
Exactly.
That's interesting.
Yeah. If you are growing coffee, and let's say you're growing coffee on whatever acreage that you have, essentially if you're just growing the coffee trees alone, you can decide to add value input to your coffee plantation by, let's say, planting other trees alongside your coffee.
So let's trees in the coffee plantation.
Yes. So let's say planting macadamia or planting what we call shade trees, which essentially would also help to improve the yield of your coffee.
Okay.
But because you have a lot more vegetation cover over your land, that piece of land where you're farming it sustainably. There's a lot more moisture retained, and as such you find that you have a higher yield from the production side. But those trees, that vegetation is also doing a very good job in removing carbon dioxide from the air and using it basically in its photosynthesis or process through which it generates food for itself.
Okay.
Now through that you are saving the environment because you're removing this carbon dioxide, which essentially is causing global warming. And the world is saying that because of that, we can buy those carbon credits from you. So as I said, you can either sell it to governments who are polluting more than your government. The second one is companies, the oil and gas companies, the airline industry. All of these emit or cause emissions. And because of the laws in their home countries, they also mandated that if you are emitting, you're supposed to measure to see how much you're emitting. What activities are you taking, are you considering, or are you part of that are offsetting those emissions?
Okay.
And so these companies then buy these carbon credits. The trick, of course, is that the more acres that you're planting, the more carbon dioxide that is being sequestered.
Makes sense, though.
And because of the price of carbon credits, which I said can range anywhere from $7 to as high as $150, it also depends on the time that you sell the carbon credit, who you sell the carbon credit.
Now, why are they talking about carbon dioxide? This all hinged on climate change. Climate change, what do I mean? Climate change, because most people, all scientists are saying that climate change is caused by the greenhouse gas emissions that are in the atmosphere, especially carbon dioxide. So these scientists are doing everything possible in their means to curb or to reduce the emissions of these greenhouse gases, especially carbon dioxide. And some of the notes I picked is why should we even avoid carbon dioxide in the atmosphere? What? Because scientific, and this is basic biology, that carbon dioxide is needed for plant life on Earth. So, and say that if it reduces to a certain threshold, plant life here starts to die. So when you see people fighting carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, the question is, what has happened to basic biology? What has happened to the basic biology we were taught in school, that carbon dioxide is essential for the growth of plants on Earth? But these people are fighting it. So I want you to keep certain of these common sense things that you've known for years or since you are a child, that these people are coming against, okay? And then he also talks about, it talks about, because it even global warming. I don't think it's even in line with the rebrand of this entire agenda. The agenda has rebranded to climate change in order to cater for whether the planet is cooling or warming. They are winning, because at times they called it global warming, and again tended to cool, which was against the agenda. So now they rebranded it to climate change, but it's calling it climate global warming. But that's not the issue. He said that, these companies, that people or countries that accumulate or that conserve the environment by planting trees, they accumulate these carbon credits, which they then later on can sell to countries that are abusing the environment or that are polluting the atmosphere. Okay, then so we or even companies, okay, therefore we who conserve accumulate these credits, and those that abuse or pollute the atmosphere a lot, they run down their credits. So when they run down their credits, they are bound to come and buy from us who conserve a lot. So in essence, there is an ongoing market. So how do these things work? I think every country, and again every company, depending on production and what it does, they are given a certain threshold of carbon emissions that they should not exceed. That say, if you are into production of mattresses or shirts or cars, you should not exceed this level of pollution. You shouldn't pollute, say, up to 100 tons, or you shouldn't emit 100 tons of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, say, per year or per month or per quarter, whatever it is. So in order to keep you in check, you're bound to do two things. Either you cut down on your production, or two, you have to engage in mitigation measures that curb the carbon dioxide that goes up in the atmosphere. Say, for example, if you're an industry that is involved in, this, production, and you're emitting a lot of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, then you have to do something on the side that is about environmental conservation, like planting of trees, like, and all those things. But if you can't do them, then you have to look for another person who perhaps is conserving the environment but is producing less. Therefore, that person has a lot of credit, unused credit. Therefore, you come and buy from them that credit that they are not using. I hope I'm making sense here. You had this credit, you used it up. There's another one who had this credit, and they haven't even touched it. They are producing less. Therefore, you go and buy their credit, because perhaps they are engaged in environmental friendly activities, and when you buy that credit, that means you can maintain your production at a certain level. In instance, you can continue to abuse the environment or emit as many fumes in the atmosphere, because you can afford it. You can buy the credits from someone else. Are we getting it? So in essence, that's the bit about carbon credits. About apparently fighting climate change, and fighting it how? By curbing the greenhouse gas emissions in the atmosphere. How? Especially carbon dioxide. How? By, you're either reducing your production, but if you don't want to reduce your production, look for those who are engaged in environmental conservation measures and buy credit from them, because you have used or have exceeded the threshold. That's the essence of it all. So in essence, carbon credits are a permit that allows you to emit a given level of carbon dioxide. That's it. So if you exceed that level, you need to buy more credit from those that are conserving the environment. So a company, depending on the extent of your emission, you are assigned different carbon credits. Even countries are assigned carbon credits. And so that's what these carbon markets are all about. So there are people who have said, you know what, we realize that countries or industries will continue to produce. And because they are continuing to produce, for us, let us ensure that we invest in accumulation of carbon credits. So for them, they accumulate carbon credits. They engage in planting of trees or these environmental conservation measures. So they accumulate credit. a lot of it. When they accumulate that credit, so the other companies that have used up their, that have abused the environment will come and buy from them. You get, so that is the whole carbon markets kind of thing. But this all stems from a concept that was birthed in one of their climate change, summit. It was called net zero. Net zero. What is net zero? Net zero by 2050. This what I picked up is a global target established by the Paris Climate Agreement to balance greenhouse gas emissions. So how do we balance it? That if you are emitting, say, 1,000 tons of greenhouse gas emissions in the atmosphere, 1,000 tons, you also have to engage in environmentally friendly activities that will remove 1,000 tons of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. You emit 1,000 tons, you also have to ensure you remove 1,000 tons of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, hence reaching net zero. They want to achieve this by 2050. But let's look at a case study here in Kenya. It said that in Kenya, that there are carbon credit developers. There's companies, Wildlife Works Carbon, Shuru Hills Conservation Trust, Northern Rangeland Trust. So those are involved in afforestation, grassland management. So people establish companies to do that. That as they engage in these environmental friendly activities, they accumulate credit. And they have gotten, apparently, in the past, major buyers like Netflix, like Apple, like Shell, like KLM, like even mining companies. You get like BHP. So you find that these are companies, especially now look at Shell. They say that use of fossil fuels contributes massively to the greenhouse gas emissions. Therefore, Shell needs a lot of carbon credits to continue operating. So what does Shell do? Shell, of course, they also engage in a bit of environmental friendly activities, but they have to buy more credits, carbon credits from other areas, people or governments, in order to keep production. So Shell goes to Kenya, KLM, airlines, even just one route, they emit a lot of emissions in the atmosphere, greenhouse emissions, the carbon dioxide and so on. And therefore, what does KLM have to do to maintain its operation on all routes and even perhaps increase them? Of course, they are also engaged in some environmentally friendly activities, but that's not enough. They have to buy credit from someone else. Now, are you seeing the money? Now, here's the money. In 2022, it said that Kenya had 11 million carbon credits. It was issued 11 million carbon credits. So, and it was said that eliminating just a ton of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, it costs about $40 to $80. $40 to $80 sounds little money. Now let us put it to about $60 midway. So if someone is spending $6, okay, with that $6, he goes to buy carbon credits from Kenya. Kenya had 11 million. 11 million buying at 11 million carbon credits bought at $60 per carbon credit. That would equal to $660 million. $660 million. That's what Kenya was making. Then in 2021, say Delta bought 1 million tons of carbon credits from Kenya and Uganda. 1 million, again, if we say it was about $60, that comes to 60 million. In 2023, again, Kenya has again issued 2.2 in 2023. 2.2 million tons of carbon credits were sold to 16 Saudi companies. If we go by the rate of $60 per ton, that comes to $132 million. So there is money in these carbon markets. There is money. And crazy money. But of course, most of the arguments have been that much of this has been going to middlemen, not exactly the people that are engaged in the environmental conservation activities. But again, also, you find that also already somewhere that at a certain time that Tesla, the car manufacturers, were making more money in selling carbon credits than even the manufacture of cars. Why were they making more money in the sale of carbon credits because they were engaged in manufacturing of electric cars. And he said that electric cars do not emit greenhouse gases as much as the diesel and petrol cars. Therefore, they are more favored. Therefore, as he engaged, or Elon Musk engaged in the production of electric cars, he accumulated a lot of carbon credits because it was environmentally friendly. And therefore, he could sell those carbon credits to other companies and countries that needed them to maintain a threshold, a given threshold of their production. So these things are all done apparently to curb greenhouse gas emissions as we fight climate change. But I'll give you the far-reaching implications. That's just to set the foundations of what they are trying to do and what the market looks like. The grossy side, the good side that was showed on NTV. Again, there are also proposals. Last year, October 2025, there are proposals of introducing carbon taxes. Carbon taxes, that it is the only realistic way to curb environmental pollution. This headline, it was in the Wall Street Journal. United Nations is about to tax you. A new global climate tax would be the ultimate in taxation without representation. This is what the article read. Voters are showing their opposition to the net zero climate agenda whenever they get the chance. But that isn't stopping the United Nations, which this week is poised to impose what amounts to a global tax of carbon emissions. This is the definition of taxation without representation. The International Maritime Organization, a UN body based in London, hopes at this meeting this week, that's in October 2025, last year, to ensure, it hopes this week to ensure final approval of its net zero framework for shipping. The measure would impose charges per metric ton of carbon dioxide that ships emit above certain limits. The tax would be $100 or $380 per metric ton, depending on various factors. That could translate to an annual tax take of $10 billion to $12 billion. So these people again were also proposing taxes that on top of these carbon markets, of these companies that are abusing the atmosphere, that are abusing our environment, trying to buy more credit, and other companies producing this credit and these others buying the credit. On top of that, why don't you also introduce a tax to tax these companies, all these these manufacturers that are always abusing the environment? But thank God, Trump came out swinging, and he said that in the post, this was October 16, 2025, he came out swinging, saying, "I'm outraged that the International Maritime Organization is voting in London this week to pass a global tax. The United States will not stand for this global green new scam tax on shipping and will not adhere to it in any way, shape, or form. We will not tolerate increased prices on American consumers or the creation of green new scam bureaucracy to spend your money on their green dreams. Stand with the United States and vote no to in London tomorrow." That's what he posted. Of course, the idea or the policy was shut down. It never, got the backing it required, and that in no small means to, or thanks to Trump. But here's the thing: how do you think this will affect manufacturing if we impose, or if these carbon taxes are imposed on companies? Now that was shipping, or if these carbon limits are imposed on industries, it's going to affect them like this. That if a company, say Mukwano, is told that Mukwano or Murana, they're told that for you to manufacture whatever you're doing, do not exceed this kind of emission, this level of emissions. We've given you only a cap of, say, 100 tons or 1,000 tons of carbon credits per year. 1,000 what tons? Therefore, your production, if your production in terms of if your emissions go past 1,000 tons, you are in the gray zone. You are in the dark zone. You are supposed to buy more credits from someone else in order to keep production, or you're supposed to engage in environmental friendly activities in order to maintain and keep up your production. You understand? So companies are being slapped by an extra cost of production. An extra cost that is not bringing back money, because usually companies can shoulder extra costs if they make profit sense that I am incurring this cost, but it's making business sense. I'm going to make the profits out of it. Now here they are being slapped with another cost that, hey, you are emitting a lot. Now before you emit a lot, you need to buy credit from someone else, carbon credits from someone else, so that you have permission to produce at that level. What is the company going to do? One is going to either buy those credits or engage more, spend more in terms of environmentally friendly activities, and what that is going to increase their cost of production. When that increases their cost of production, who do you think is going to shoulder that? They are going to pass it on to the customer. The customer, therefore, okay, a shirt you've been buying, say 50K, it will go to 70. Say if someone has been rearing cows, even these days they say cows, livestock emissions, even cows, contribute a lot to these emissions. Said someone has been rearing their cows and they say, no, this farm of yours you have of 10 cows, 20, 50, or 100, you're emitting this so many greenhouse gas emissions. Therefore, you need to curb and stop at this. What is that person going to do? Either they are going to buy this carbon credit so that they can rear the number of cows they want, and or they are going to cut down on the number of cows they are rearing. Who do you think that affects? If they incur an extra cost, that means the kilo of meat you've been buying, say at 15K, 20K, will then go up to 30K because the operation cost increased. Or if it decides, okay, I'm not going to incur extra costs, let me cut down on my production. If Mrana says, let me cut down on my production, or if the farm manager said, let me cut down on the animals I'm keeping, what is that going to create? It's going to create a scarcity, because they are going to create less than what the market demands. It's going to create a scarcity, and it's going to create what? Rationing. Now, if it's Mukwano has been producing all this cooking oil, what's going to happen? It's going to produce less, and all the companies, all the restaurants, hotels, these roadside people who use cooking oil, all that demand will not be met. What's going to happen then? There is too much demand, less supply. It's going to drive the costs, the cost of the goods and services through the roof. And to his expense, it's to your expense. The companies are not going to shoulder this extra cost. No, they have to pass it on. Either they buy more credit and maintain a certain level of production so that the products or the services are there for us to enjoy, but at a higher price. Or they cut down on their production to keep within that threshold of carbon credits that they are given, and then produce less, which means they are not meeting the market demand. Hence, there's an artificial scarcity. When there's an artificial scarcity, prices will go up because so many people are going for very few goods. Now, are you seeing the negative end of these carbon credits things that they are selling us? It's scaling industrialization. That's it. Especially if you are to look at third world countries. Of course, the multinationals that can afford, for them, they'll easily buy the carbon credits. But what about a small startup? What about a small and medium enterprise? Will they be able to shoulder these extra costs? Of course not. They won't be able to. And then they'll be driven out of the market, out of production. And who will stay in production? It's the multinationals, it's the giants, hence creating monopolies who will then decide for us what to eat. Now, for example, if a person at the farm decides, you know what, instead of keeping all these 500 cows or 1,000 or whatever number of cows, let me reduce the number of cows. If they reduce the number of cows, do you know that we are being told that, hey, if you can eat these lab-grown meats, there will be options for that. Okay, and what about if this industry decide to close down, like in the UK to finish with the coal power after 42 years. Now UK had to close this coal power plant. Why? Apparently to stick within the net zero. As a country, they are given also certain limits to keep within. And you see, when they talk about fossil fuels emitting a lot of fumes, they're talking about coal production, they're talking about mining, they're talking about oil, they're talking about diesel. Those are things mainly that are under attack. The things that have sustained the energy production and of the world. So UK, which plays so much into trying to keep within net zero, is shutting down its industries. To whose detriment? People are losing jobs. And when you cut down on the production of energy, what happens? Then there's load shedding, there's rationing of the little energy that you have. And then what happens? The prices go through the roof. So it's you and me that are affected by this nonsensical carbon credit kind of system that is being introduced. And now it's being promoted in Uganda. Then here is Australia. Australia heading to net zero jobs. Because they also want to play, to adhere to net zero. 8,495 direct jobs under threat, 1,780 already lost. This is Australia because they have shut down industries. All industries have to cut down on their production. When they are cut down on their production, employment is lost. But people are here selling us carbon credits, how they are good, how they are nice. No, there's nothing nice about this entire climate hoax. And if someone is bringing up, suggestions and ideas and measures of a hoax, of a lie, all those things are a lie. Climate change is a lie. And therefore, everything that comes after it is a lie. It's like the COVID was. COVID was a huge hoax. And therefore, all the standard operating procedures that were being, proposed were a hoax. Marx, this, that, all hoaxes. It's the same thing with climate change. Now they are coming up with carbon credits. So please wake up your neighbor. There is nothing fancy about these carbon markets. They are presenting a picture of making money, producing these carbon credits and selling them to companies and countries and making a killing. But they are actually going to kill industrialization, hence killing jobs, killing the supply chains, leading to artificial scarcities. And when they lead to artificial scarcities, they lead to artificial inflation, driving up prices. And when they start to ration, who will suffer most? It will be us, the people that will suffer most. When they say no flying, for them, they are flying to various places, to their climate summits. They fly private jet, but for you, don't fly because, no, no. You're abusing the environment. And then they talk about conservation. And when they had the climate summit in Brazil, guess what? They slashed down 100,000 trees from the Amazon to make a way for them to go to the climate summit. You understand? So these are the people, they are hypocrites that we are dealing with. They say one thing and then they do another. They are flying private jet lecturing us who are driving that, hey, stop abusing the environment. And this thing is going to affect mainly us, the developing nations. Because for them, they have industries that can afford to shoulder this extra cost. Their profitability can allow them to wiggle around and even buy these credits. Now, what about our developing industries? Will they be able to survive the international markets when they have this extra baggage slapped on them of meeting a certain quota of carbon credits, or else cut down on your production or get out of business? That's it for today. This is part one on this carbon credits, but I also return in part two, and I will show you how it's going to reach your doorstep. Because now we are looking at it in terms of industries, in terms of countries, how it's how economies are going to fail if they try to adhere to this net zero nonsense and carbon credit nonsense. But then I will bring you evidence how it's going to also affect you. This is it for today, but I'll leave you with this clip of Trump responding to this net zero and carbon credit nonsense. And that, I think, should be everyone's response to it. That's it for today.
One of the most urgent tasks, not only for our movement, but for our country, is to decisively defeat the climate hysteria hoax. The ocean is rising, it's rising. It's coming. It's within 300 years, we're going to gain 1/100th of an inch in the ocean and have a little more beachfront property. It's going to be a terrible thing. No, it's a hoax. The whole thing is it's so crazy. In the meantime, our factories can't perform. They want us to use wind, intermittent wind. Darling, I'd like to watch the president tonight on television. No, you can't. The wind isn't blowing, right? The wind isn't blowing. There's no television tonight, darling. The wind isn't blowing. And by the way, our house went down to about 30% of the value because we're near a windmill that makes a lot of noise, kills all our birds, and ruins the landscape. Other than that, it's a wonderful thing for the environment. These people are crazy. But they're radical climate people, and I don't believe they mean it. They can't mean it because it's too easy. They can't mean it. The radical left's fear-mongering about climate and our future is no longer just scaring American youth. It's destroying America's economy, weakening our society, and eviscerating our middle class. It's really hurting us. And conservative leaders, think tanks, and intellectuals must be fearless in calling out the lunacy of what you're seeing and what you're being led into. The world is not ending. Our future is not dying. We have to defeat the climate hoaxers once and for all. You know, they said we only had 12 years to live. That was 4 years ago, remember? They said our country has 12 years. And that was like, I said, oh, what happened? What happened? They said, it's the climate. I said, really? Oh, that doesn't make sense. So that means we only have 8 years. That's ridiculous. The real problem is with nuclear weapons, we may only have 6 months. You talk about global warming, that's the real global warming, not the global warming hoax that they don't even use it anymore. They call it climate change. Remember, they used to call it global warming. The planet is warm, but that wasn't working out too well because a lot of places were extremely cool. So they were getting killed. They were getting killed. And then they changed it all of a sudden, climate change, because you can't miss on climate change. It can go up, it can go down, it can go 15 different directions. It's climate change, it's killing us.